What's the moment you realized the lazy guy in your unit was secretly a genius? Private Wyatt Simmons was the worst soldier I'd ever seen. Couldn't run without gasping, couldn't shoot without missing half the targets, couldn't stay awake during any briefing longer than 10 minutes. Sergeants called him dead weight, other soldiers called him worse. Every formation, Wyatt would be in the back row, eyes half closed like he'd been up all night. During PT, he'd somehow disappear to the bathroom for 20 minutes at a time. Field exercises, he'd find the softest patch of ground available and nap while everyone else worked. Our squad leader, Sergeant Nolan Burke, absolutely hated him. Made it his personal mission to smoke Wyatt into shape. Simmons, you're a waste of government resources. I've seen better motivation from a sandbag. My grandmother moves faster than you and she's been dead for 6 years. Wyatt would just shrug, never argued back, never made excuses, never showed any emotion at all. Just existed at the bare minimum level required to not get kicked out. I figured he'd wash out eventually. Everyone in the unit assumed the same thing, just a matter of time before paperwork caught up with him. Then came the vehicle breakdown that changed everything. Our convoy got stuck in the middle of nowhere during a major training exercise. Lead Humvee's engine died completely. No warning, just stopped running. Mechanics were 3 hours away at the main base. Radio communications were spotty at best. Sergeant Burke was furious, pacing back and forth, kicking dirt, cursing at the sky. This ruins the entire timeline. Command's going to have our heads. We'll be doing remedial training for months. The two mechanics we had with us couldn't figure out the problem. Spent an hour poking around the engine compartment, scratching their heads, trying different things. Nothing worked. Something about the electrical system being completely fried beyond their ability to fix. That's when Wyatt wandered over from the back of the convoy. Still looking half asleep, hands shoved in his pockets, moving like he had nowhere important to be. Mind if I take a look? He mumbled. Burke actually laughed out loud. Simmons, you can barely tie your own boots without supervision. Get back in line with the others. But our lead mechanic, specialist Lane Crawford, was getting desperate. Weather was turning bad. We needed options. Let him look, Sergeant. Honestly, can't make the situation any worse than it already is. Burke threw his hands up. Fine, knock yourself out, Simmons. Wyatt leaned over the engine compartment. Didn't touch anything for 2 full minutes. Just stood there staring at the wiring and components like he was reading a really interesting book. Then he started talking. Not to us, to himself, muttering under his breath. Alternator's spinning fine. Battery connections look solid, but this wire right here, he pointed at something none of us could even see clearly. Someone spliced it wrong during the last maintenance cycle, created a feedback loop that eventually fried the voltage regulator completely. Lane moved closer, squinting at where Wyatt was pointing. How could you possibly know that just from looking? Because it's the only explanation that matches all the symptoms we're seeing. Wyatt yawned like he was discussing the weather. You got any electrical tape and maybe a multimeter in your kit? 20 minutes later, the Humvee's engine roared back to life. Wyatt had rewired something, bypassed something else, and created a temporary fix using parts that shouldn't have worked together, but somehow did. The mechanics just stood there with their mouths open. Lane stared at him like he just witnessed a magic trick. Where the hell did you learn to do that? My dad restores vintage cars back home. Been helping him in the garage since I was about 6 years old. Another yawn. Electrical systems are basically just puzzles. I've always liked puzzles. Burke was completely speechless. First time I'd ever seen that happen. After the exercise ended, word spread quickly about Wyatt's impossible fix. Command started asking questions. Why was this kid wasting away in a regular infantry unit when he clearly had serious technical skills? Turns out, Wyatt had scored in the 99th percentile on his military entrance exams. Could have picked literally any job the army offered. He chose infantry specifically because, and I quote, it seemed like the least amount of thinking required. He wasn't lazy at all. He was bored out of his mind. So completely understimulated that he basically checked out mentally from anything that didn't capture his interest. The army reassigned him to vehicle maintenance the following month. Suddenly, Wyatt completely transformed. Showed up early, stayed late, actually seemed fully awake and engaged for once in his life. Within 6 months, he completely redesigned the diagnostic procedures for our entire motor pool. Cut average repair times by 40%. Saved the base thousands of dollars in unnecessary part replacements. Last I heard, some defense contractor recruited him straight out of the army. Makes 6 figures now, solving complex engineering problems that nobody else can figure out. Burke ran into him at a unit reunion last year. Asked him straight up why he'd acted so lazy and useless during all that infantry training. Wyatt just smiled and said, Sergeant, I wasn't being lazy. I was conserving energy for things that actually mattered to me. Infantry stuff didn't need my brain engaged, so I gave it a rest. Burke told me later he still doesn't know whether to feel insulted or genuinely impressed by that answer.